How to learn English. 1. Mindset is everything. Mindset is the fundamental way we perceive ourselves, the world around us, and the challenges we face. It is the invisible force shaping our thoughts, emotions, actions, and ultimately the results we achieve in life. Having the right mindset is not just about positive thinking or wishful optimism. It is about adopting a deep practical belief that we can grow, learn, and overcome difficulties no matter how hard the journey may seem. When you develop a growth mindset, you understand that your abilities, intelligence, and talents are not fixed traits given at birth, but can be cultivated through effort, persistence, and a willingness to learn from mistakes. This belief changes everything because it allows you to see setback not as failures, but as valuable feedback, signals that guide you to adjust your approach and improve. For example, when faced with failure, a growth mindset leads you to ask, "What can I learn from this?" instead of, "Why am I not good enough?" This simple shift in thinking can transform your entire approach to life's challenges. On the other hand, a fixed mindset, the belief that your qualities are static and unchangeable, creates a mental barrier that limits your potential. It can make you avoid risks, fear criticism, and give up easily when things get tough. People with a fixed mindset often compare themselves to others and feel threatened by their success, while those with a growth mindset find inspiration in others' achievements and use them as motivation to improve themselves. Mindset also affects how we handle stress and adversity. With a resilient mindset, you learn to remain calm, stay focused, and find creative solutions under pressure, rather than becoming overwhelmed or defeated. Beyond personal success, mindset influences our relationships and overall well-being. When you approach life with curiosity, openness, and a willingness to grow, you tend to build stronger connections with others because you listen more, empathize better, and communicate with greater patience and respect. Your emotional health flourishes because you are less likely to be bogged down by negative self-talk, fear, or anxiety. Instead, you cultivate hope, confidence, and a sense of control over your life. The most empowering part about mindset is that it's not something you are born with. It is something you can develop and strengthen through practice and awareness. Just like training a muscle, your brain can be rewired to adopt healthier, more productive patterns of thinking. This involves intentionally challenging your limiting beliefs, surrounding yourself with positive influences, setting realistic yet challenging goals, and celebrating small wins along the way. Every time you choose to believe in your potential rather than your limitations, you're rewiring your brain for success. Ultimately, mindset is everything because it determines how you interpret every experience, make decisions, and shape your future. It turns obstacles into opportunities, doubt into determination, and dreams into reality. When you truly understand this and commit to nurturing a strong, flexible, and positive mindset, you empower yourself to live a life filled with growth, fulfillment, and endless possibilities. No matter what external circumstances you face, your mindset will always be your most valuable tool in creating the life you want. 2. Learn the basics with purpose. Learning the basics is often seen as a simple, routine task, something necessary but unexciting. However, when you approach learning the basics with clear purpose and intention, It becomes one of the most powerful and transformative steps on your journey toward mastery and success. The basics are the fundamental building blocks of any skill, subject, or discipline. They are the foundation that supports everything else you will learn and accomplish. Without a strong foundation in the basics, advanced knowledge and skills will be unstable and difficult to maintain. That is why it is crucial to not only learn the basics thoroughly, but to do so with a deep understanding of why they matter and how they fit into the bigger picture of your goals and dreams. When you learn with purpose, you move beyond rote memorization or mechanical repetition. You engage your mind fully and seek to grasp the underlying principles, patterns, and logic that govern the basics. This helps you create mental connections that make learning more meaningful and easier to recall later on. Purpose-driven learning of the basics requires patience, discipline, and a mindset open to growth. It means accepting that progress is often slow at the beginning, but every small step forward is an investment in your future success. For example, when learning a musical instrument, mastering simple scales and finger exercises may feel repetitive and dull, but these exercises develop your muscle memory and finger strength, which are essential for playing complex pieces later. Similarly, in mathematics, understanding basic arithmetic thoroughly is essential before moving on to algebra or calculus. When you have a clear purpose, whether to become a skilled musician, an engineer, a writer, or a leader, you understand that these basic lessons are not obstacles to overcome, but stepping stones toward your larger ambitions. Moreover, learning the basics with purpose means setting intentional goals and creating a plan to achieve them. This involves asking yourself important questions. Why do I want to learn this? How will mastering these fundamentals help me reach my goals? What challenges might I face, and how can I prepare for them? Having answers to these questions fuels motivation, especially when learning feels difficult or tedious. It transforms your mindset from, I have to learn this, to, I choose to learn this because it matters. This shift in perspective builds resilience, helping you push through moments of frustration or self-doubt. Purposeful learning also encourages curiosity and active engagement. Rather than passively absorbing information, you become an active participant by questioning, experimenting, and reflecting. For instance, if you are learning the basics of cooking, rather than just following recipes mechanically, you might explore how different ingredients interact, how heat affects flavors, and why certain techniques are used. This kind of curiosity deepens your understanding and allows you to apply your knowledge creatively in new situations. It also helps you retain information longer because it is connected to your personal experience and goals. Additionally, learning the basics with purpose builds important habits and skills that extend beyond the subject matter itself. You develop discipline, focus, time management, and problem-solving abilities that serve you in every area of life. By mastering how to learn effectively, you become better equipped to handle future challenges and continuous growth. Purpose-driven basic learning transforms education from a task into a lifelong process of self-improvement and adaptation. In a world that often pushes for quick results and shortcuts, embracing the basics with patience and purpose is a rare but invaluable approach. It prepares you to tackle complexity with confidence, make informed decisions, and innovate because your understanding is solid. It also nurtures humility and openness to continual learning, qualities essential for personal and professional development. Ultimately, learning the basics with purpose is about investing in yourself in a way that pays dividends for years to come. It is a commitment to quality over speed, depth over surface, and meaning over memorization. When you dedicate yourself to this process, you build a foundation not only for skills, but for a mindset that values growth, perseverance, and excellence. No matter what your goals are, whether mastering a craft, excelling academically, starting a business, or improving your health, your success depends on how well you learn and apply the basics. These fundamental lessons are the roots that support your entire growth journey. By learning them with purpose, you transform your efforts into a powerful force that drives you forward, turning potential into real achievement and dreams into reality. 3. Make learning active, not passive. Learning is not just about sitting still, listening, watching, or reading. If all you do is passively absorb information, it rarely sticks, and it rarely transforms your abilities in any meaningful way. Passive learning is like trying to fill a leaking bucket. You may pour in a lot of knowledge, but most of it will slip away quickly. Active learning, on the other hand, is like planting seeds in fertile soil. You don't just pour in facts. You nurture understanding, apply what you learn, make connections, and grow stronger every day. When you make learning active, you move from being a spectator to becoming a participant in your own growth. You stop waiting for someone to teach you and start taking responsibility for how deeply you understand and how well you can use what you know. Active learning involves doing things with the knowledge, solving problems, practicing tasks, analyzing real-life situations, asking critical questions, testing your memory, applying ideas in projects, and reflecting on what you've learned. It means you're not just hearing about something, you're doing it, using it, and shaping it into something meaningful. Imagine learning how to swim. You could watch hours of YouTube videos, read books about swimming techniques, or even memorize every movement perfectly. But if you never get into the water, you will never actually learn to swim. The same is true for any subject. In architecture, for example, it's not enough to just study famous buildings or watch design tutorials. You need to actually sketch ideas, model in software, present your designs, receive critiques, and revise based on feedback. This is how your brain starts to connect theory to reality. Or take learning a new language. You can watch movies and study grammar rules for months, but unless you actually speak, write, and interact with native speakers, your fluency will never grow. Learning only becomes powerful when you take action. When you move from passive information intake to active experimentation, creation, and reflection. Making learning active doesn't mean you always need a classroom or a teacher. It means you ask questions constantly like, why does this work this way? What's the reason behind this rule? How can I apply this idea to a real-world problem? And what would happen if I tried a different method? Active learners push themselves to explain concepts in their own words, to visualize them, to create stories or metaphors, or to teach others what they've just learned. Teaching is one of the most powerful forms of active learning. It forces you to simplify and organize your knowledge, which strengthens your understanding. Another important strategy is self-testing. Don't wait for an exam. After you learn something, close the book and try to recall the key ideas. Struggling to remember is part of the learning process. It strengthens memory and shows you what you still need to work on. Active learning is also about feedback. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. In fact, mistakes are essential to the learning process, because when you engage actively and fail, you see exactly where your misunderstanding lies. You don't learn just by getting the right answer. You learn more by figuring out why you got it wrong and fixing it. Whether you're learning software, public speaking, business, or writing, you should always seek feedback, review your performance, and adapt. This makes learning dynamic and personal, not dry and mechanical. It also makes it far more exciting. When you learn actively, you're constantly solving puzzles, building things, discovering insights, and improving. It turns learning into an adventure, not a chore. Also, active learning builds skills that extend far beyond just knowledge. It helps you become a better thinker, communicator, and problem solver. It trains your brain to be alert, flexible, and resilient. You learn how to focus deeply, how to organize complex ideas, how to push through frustration, and how to keep going when things get hard. These are the skills that truly successful people use every day. Passive learners may have knowledge, but active learners know how to use that knowledge to create change, build projects, fix problems, and lead others. And in a world full of distractions and surface-level information, active learning sets you apart. It shows that you are serious about growth and not just going through the motions. In the end, active learning is not just a better method, it's a better mindset. It's the belief that you are responsible for your growth and that your learning will only go as far as the effort you're willing to put in. It means showing up every day with curiosity, energy, and intention. It means being open to challenges, ready to question, eager to apply, and brave enough to make mistakes. Active learning turns your mind into a powerful tool, one that doesn't just hold facts, but knows how to use them to build your future. So whether you're a student, a professional, an artist, or a dreamer, remember, knowledge becomes power only when you use it. Make learning active, not passive, and you'll unlock the full potential of everything you learn. 4. Build a consistent learning routine. Building a consistent learning routine is a foundational step toward achieving meaningful, lasting growth in any area of life. Whether it's mastering a new language, studying for a degree, developing a professional skill, or simply expanding your personal knowledge. The key word here is consistent, learning in random bursts might bring short-term results, but it's the steady, day-by-day effort that truly builds understanding, confidence, and expertise. A well-structured routine not only helps you stay organized and focused, but also reduces the stress of not knowing what to do next. When your learning becomes a habit, something you do regularly, without excessive effort, it stops feeling like a burden and starts becoming a natural part of your daily rhythm. To begin, define your learning goals as clearly as possible. What are you trying to achieve? Be specific. For example, instead of saying, "I want to learn photography," try, "I want to understand the basics of manual camera settings and composition within 3 months." Having a clear goal gives your learning direction and purpose. Once your goals are set, break them down into smaller, achievable steps. This could mean dedicating the first week to watching introductory videos, the next to practicing specific techniques, and so on. The more detailed your plan, the easier it becomes to follow it without getting overwhelmed or distracted. Next, choose a consistent time and place for learning. Think about your daily schedule. When are you most alert and least likely to be interrupted? It might be early morning before your day begins, during lunch breaks, or in the quiet of the evening. Choose a time that feels natural and sustainable for you. Then, create a designated learning space. This doesn't have to be fancy, but it should be comfortable and free from distractions. Having a regular time and place helps signal to your brain that it's time to focus and absorb new information. Variety is also essential in a successful learning routine. Engaging with the material in different ways helps reinforce what you've learned and keeps things interesting. Mix passive activities like reading or watching videos with active ones like writing summaries, practicing exercises, solving problems, or explaining the concept to someone else. Teaching is one of the most effective ways to deepen understanding. You can also use tools like flashcards, quizzes, apps, or audio recordings to engage different parts of your brain. Learning should not feel like a chore. It should feel like an adventure where you're discovering something new every day. Consistency doesn't mean you have to spend hours every day. In fact, shorter, focused sessions, like 25 to 45 minutes, can often be more effective than long, exhausting ones. The important thing is to keep going. Even on days when you're busy or tired, try to do something, even if it's just reviewing a few notes or listening to a short podcast. Small steps, taken regularly, lead to big results over time. When you build momentum, it becomes easier to keep going, and missing a session feels out of place rather than normal. Equally important is reflection. Set aside time once a week to review what you've learned. Ask yourself, what progress have I made? What's still unclear? What changes do I need to make to my routine? Reflection helps you stay connected to your learning journey and make smarter adjustments. Remember to also celebrate your progress. Recognizing your improvements, no matter how small, can keep you motivated and give you a sense of accomplishment. Lastly, be flexible and compassionate with yourself. Life is unpredictable, and it's natural to face days when you're not able to stick to your routine. Don't let these moments discourage you. Instead of giving up or feeling guilty, gently bring yourself back to the routine the next day. What matters most isn't perfection, it's persistence. Over time, as your routine becomes second nature, you'll begin to see how far you've come. Learning won't feel like something you have to do, but something you want to do, a meaningful part of your life that continues to open new doors and possibilities. 5. Learn with meaning and emotion. Learning with meaning and emotion is not just a technique. It's a transformative way of engaging with knowledge that turns passive study into an active, powerful experience of growth, understanding, and self-discovery. It taps into the deepest parts of our minds and hearts, helping us remember more, think more deeply, and ultimately care more about what we're learning. When you learn something with genuine meaning, it becomes part of your identity. Not just something you know, but something you understand and feel. This is because the brain doesn't separate knowledge from emotion. In fact, our emotional responses often guide what we remember and how we prioritize information. Have you ever wondered why you can clearly recall a moment from your childhood or a lesson a teacher once taught you, even after many years. Chances are that memory is tied to a strong emotional experience, a moment that made you feel curious, joyful, shocked, proud, or even embarrassed. Emotion imprints learning onto your memory with far greater strength than rote memorization ever could. To truly learn with meaning and emotion, it's essential to go beyond just gathering information. You must form connections. Ask yourself questions like, why does this matter to me? How does this relate to what I already know or what I've experienced? How could this knowledge help me or someone else in the future? These questions invite your personal perspective into the process and make the knowledge feel real, useful, and worth remembering. For example, if you're studying environmental science, don't just memorize facts about pollution or climate change. Instead, reflect on how those issues affect your own community or future generations. Consider how you feel about them, what actions you could take, and why the topic is important. When learning is emotionally connected to your values, passions, or personal stories, it no longer feels like a chore. It becomes meaningful, even inspiring. One powerful way to incorporate emotion into your learning is through storytelling. Humans have passed down knowledge through stories for thousands of years because stories stir emotions, create mental images, and make abstract ideas easier to understand. Instead of memorizing dry facts, try framing what you're learning into a story. If you're studying a historical event, imagine what it was like for the people who lived through it, their struggles, hopes, and fears. If you're learning a scientific theory, think of it as a journey of discovery, where each experiment is a stepping stone toward understanding. You can even turn your own learning journey into a story. Highlight your challenges, breakthroughs, and the lessons you've learned along the way. This narrative mindset makes learning more personal, engaging, and emotionally charged. Another way to learn with emotion is to stay curious and excited about the unknown. Curiosity is a deeply emotional state. It's a mix of wonder, anticipation, and the desire to explore. When you approach learning not with dread or pressure, but with curiosity, you open yourself up to joy and surprise. Curiosity makes you ask better questions, dig deeper, and stay engaged for longer periods of time. If something confuses you or doesn't make sense, see it not as a failure, but as an invitation to explore further. Celebrate those aha moments when something clicks and appreciate the struggle it took to get there, because that struggle, that emotional investment, is what helps the knowledge stick. You can also make learning more emotional by involving your senses and your imagination. Our brains respond strongly to visual and sensory cues, so whenever possible, use images, diagrams, colors, music, or even movement to deepen your engagement. Create a vivid mental picture of what you're studying. Associate a piece of music with a particular lesson, or use color-coded notes to bring out the emotions connected to each concept. These creative tools bring learning to life in a way that flat, emotionless study simply cannot. Importantly, reflection is a crucial piece of learning with meaning and emotion. Set aside time regularly to pause and think about what you've learned, how it made you feel, and how it changed your thinking. Keep a learning journal where you not only record facts, but also your thoughts, feelings, and personal insights. Writing about your learning experiences deepens emotional connections and makes them more permanent. You begin to notice patterns in your interests, shifts in your thinking, and emotional turning points that shape your perspective. And don't underestimate the emotional power of connection, sharing what you've learned with others. When you explain something to a friend, join a discussion group, or teach someone else, you bring emotion into the process through human interaction. You're not just reciting information. You're communicating, connecting, and making learning a shared emotional experience. This not only reinforces your understanding, but also makes learning feel more meaningful because it's linked to real relationships and social impact. Finally, remember that emotion in learning doesn't always have to be positive. Frustration, confusion, and even fear are valid emotional responses that can enhance learning if you respond to them the right way. These emotions signal that you're stretching beyond your comfort zone, challenging your assumptions, and engaging with something that matters. Embrace them, learn from them, and use them as fuel to keep going. The emotional ups and downs of learning are not distractions. They are part of the journey. In summary, learning with meaning and emotion turns knowledge into wisdom. It invites your whole self, mind, heart, memory, and imagination into the process. It transforms information into insight and effort into passion. It helps you not only know something, but to feel it, understand it, and live it. And in doing so, it makes your learning journey not only more effective, but also more human, more fulfilling, and more alive. 6. From learner to speaker. Transitioning from a learner to a speaker is one of the most transformative milestones in any language learning journey, and it represents a deep shift, not just in your skill set, but in your confidence, mindset, and personal identity as a communicator. It's a process that takes time, patience, and courage, but it is also one of the most empowering experiences you can have. At first, when you're just beginning to learn a new language, everything might feel unfamiliar. You spend a lot of time absorbing, listening to native speakers, reading basic texts, memorizing vocabulary lists, and trying to understand grammar rules. You may feel like a silent observer, watching the language from the outside. This is an essential phase, and it lays the groundwork for everything that follows. But eventually there comes a point where you need to take all that passive input and turn it into active use. That's where the true growth happens, when you move from learner to speaker, from someone who studies the language to someone who uses it in real-life situations. The transition doesn't happen in a single moment. It's gradual, made up of small victories that may not seem like much at the time, but add up to big changes. It begins when you start forming your own sentences, even if they're short and simple. Maybe you introduce yourself, order food, ask a question, or describe how you're feeling. These tiny acts of expression are incredibly important. They mark the beginning of your voice taking shape in the language. At this early stage, it's completely normal to feel nervous. Many learners worry about making mistakes, sounding silly, or not being understood. But it's important to remember that mistakes are not failures. They are signs of effort and progress. Every time you try to speak, even if you hesitate or get the grammar wrong, you are building the skills and confidence needed to improve. Fluency is not born from perfection. It's born from repetition, persistence, and the willingness to keep going. One of the best ways to accelerate your journey from learner to speaker is to build a supportive and practical speaking environment. Start small. Speak to yourself in the mirror. Describe what you're doing during the day or narrate your thoughts out loud. This helps train your brain to think in the language, not just translate. You can also record yourself speaking and listen back. This might feel awkward at first, but it helps you become more aware of your pronunciation, rhythm, and progress. Next, begin speaking with others, even if only for a few minutes a day. Language exchange partners, tutors, online communities, or even voice messaging apps can give you low-pressure opportunities to practice. Remember, every real conversation, no matter how short, is a step closer to fluency. It teaches you how to think on your feet, listen actively, and adapt to the unpredictable nature of human interaction. As you become more comfortable, aim to move beyond basic exchanges. Start expressing your opinions, telling stories, asking deeper questions, and sharing your experiences. These types of conversations help you develop a richer vocabulary, more natural phrasing, and greater emotional connection to the language. When you're able to talk about things that matter to you, your dreams, your struggles, your beliefs, you're no longer just speaking mechanically. You're communicating authentically. This is when speaking becomes deeply satisfying and personal. You're not just repeating textbook sentences. You're using the language to represent your thoughts, identity, and voice. To grow as a speaker, it's also helpful to surround yourself with the language as much as possible. Immerse yourself in content that mirrors real conversation, podcasts, YouTube videos, movies, interviews, songs. Listen not just for meaning, but for rhythm, tone, and common expressions. Take note of how native speakers start conversations, express agreement or disagreement, use humor, or show emotion. Language is more than just words. It's culture, personality, and nuance. The more you expose yourself to these elements, the more naturally your own speaking will develop. Importantly, don't measure your success by how native you sound. Accent, pauses, and slight errors are completely normal. Even lifelong bilinguals mix up words. What really matters is your ability to express yourself, to connect with others, and to be understood. Confidence doesn't come from having perfect grammar. It comes from realizing that you can make yourself heard, even when things don't come out perfectly. And that's the real power of speaking. It turns you from a passive learner into an active participant. You're no longer sitting on the sidelines. You're stepping into real conversations, making real connections, and living the language. Reflection is also a key part of this transformation. Take time to notice how far you've come. Think back to your first lesson or your first hesitant sentence. Now compare that to your current ability to hold a conversation, ask for help, or express your opinions. That growth didn't happen by accident. It happened because you kept showing up, even when it was hard. Let that be your motivation to keep going. Language learning doesn't end at fluency. It continues as long as you keep using it, deepening your understanding and exploring new ways to connect. In the end, becoming a speaker means more than mastering vocabulary and grammar. It means developing the courage to speak out, the patience to improve, and the passion to communicate. It means stepping into a new version of yourself. One who can connect with people across cultures, express ideas in another tongue, and see the world through a wider lens. From learner to speaker is not a straight line, and it's not always easy, but it is possible, and it is worth every moment. Because when you reach that point, when you can confidently speak and be heard, you'll realize that you haven't just learned a language. You've built a bridge between yourself and the world.